I want to introduce Jim Washok. He's the CIO, CTO, CAIO of Richmond-based Bernie's Way. Jim is an entrepreneur, an AI consultant, technology leader who helps organizations turn complex workflows into practical measurement and measurable results. So please join me in welcoming Jim. Today his subject is going to be From Research to Risk, Practical AI for the Modern CFA. So with that, welcome Jim.
Very good.
Thanks, Tyson. Appreciate it. And Tyson, before you sit down, I'm going to give you some homework to do, or some, if you wouldn't mind handing those out and so forth, while I further provide a little bit of background. Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see everyone today. Thank you very much for turning out, especially when I learned that you all had another presentation lunch just last week. And so it's great to see everybody show up here today. And I assume that's going to be because of AI, not because of me. So I'm going to do my best to facilitate some additional information for you all in regards to AI and not tell you so much about myself. But at the same time, you may be wondering, why on earth am I here? Well, you can blame it on Ashby Price, who I'm sure you all know, because he gets around a lot. And yet again, this is another presentation that I'm doing where he's absent. So I'm starting to get the feel that he just dumps me on groups and hopes that they don't throw tomatoes and end up liking what they have to hear, but has nonetheless bailed just in case things go south. So I will be sure to give him some grief next time I see him and such. But I've known Ashby for a very long time and had done a presentation at another group that he is a part of to about 60 folks across all sorts of different industries, not specific to financial services like you all are. And much to my delight, everyone appreciated the presentation, which was fantastic. Always nice when that works out. But one of the challenging things, of course, when you're speaking with folks that are across all sorts of different industries and different types of roles, is everybody's got quite varied experience with AI. And I'm sure even though you all are in the financial industry, my guess is that's probably the same case here. Is some of you may not have even touched AI too much, maybe just because you're busy, not so much because you have any sort of distrust over it. But some of you your experience may be limited to one of the LLM platforms, the large language models like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, and your experience hasn't yet taken you into sort of a multi-LLM approach. Your experience may be limited to the AI that's being baked into tools that you use already by software companies. And no doubt you're seeing that already. Many of the tools that you're using, whether it be for work or for personal purposes, you're seeing slivers of AI being embedded into all of those tools. And it makes sense. Every software company and beyond is scrambling to incorporate this new era that we're in regards to technological efficiencies. Some of you in the room may be more advanced. You may be developing full-fledged applications using Claude Code or something to that effect. And I pledge to you, I hope this presentation, if that's the case, does not bore you. But I do nonetheless have to necessarily, given all the presentations and so forth that I do, have to target the general spectrum where folks have got some experience with AI, perhaps lower level, intermediate, so on and so forth. And if that offends anybody, I apologize. But that's the challenge that comes when you're speaking to dozens of people where you don't get the chance to survey everybody in advance. What tools do you use? And I'm not going to force you all to raise your hands and do that because, well, half of you have a fork in your hand right now, and I don't want to interrupt your eating. But suffice it to say, what I tend to do whenever I put a presentation together is always try to address the varied experiences levels. So if you're new to AI, I think you're going to find a lot that you're going to be able to take away from this. And if you're very experienced with AI, my hope is you'll still be taking notes on your phone or certainly in your memory and such. But before I get into that, I do want to share a little bit of again, so why did Ashby ask me to do this? Well, I've been in the IT space for over 30 years. And have served in just about every function that exists within technological sphere outside of cybersecurity. For whatever reason, that sliver of IT has just never floated my boat, and I've never been wanting to delve deep into that area. Although, given the threats that come with AI, perhaps that might change sometime soon. We'll see. But for right now, I tend to stay out of that space. But I've always been on the bleeding edge. I mean, crying out loud, I was developing in BASIC when I was 8 years old on a Commodore 64. Anybody else have a Commodore 64 in the room? Come on, raise those hands, proud. I hear the company is still going and still making them. So I saw a big news article about that, I think on CNBC sometime last year. So if you want to harken back to those glory days and buy one, check it out. So I'm not sure what the URL is, but Commodore 64 still exists. So, but nonetheless, also when the internet was just being commercialized in 1993, I was there. When mobile was was emerging in the late 90s, and certainly texting was starting to take off at the turn of the millennium, I was there as well. In fact, started a company doing mobile messaging, operational mobile messaging for the likes of Estes Trucking, Applebee's, Panera Bread. We got their catering division actually off the ground, utilizing text messaging and so forth. That was a lot of fun. Sold that company in 2015 and have since continued to be always adapting, learning, innovating. And so when ChatGPT emerged, now coming up to 4 years this November, that's almost hard to believe. Like seriously, 4 years this November, that's crazy. I jumped right in. And so started using it for my consultancy then, which was focused more on cloud implementations, and recognized very quickly the value that we had here. Also, it was the one technology that I found, even including our TV remote, that I was able to educate my wife on in just 10 minutes. Now, that's not to indicate she's a dunce. She actually works with software as part of her profession. But it just became so apparent to her in just 10 minutes, oh my gosh, this is insane. And she delved right in as well. And I'm proud to say my 82-year-old in-laws love AI. So I hope there's some love here in the room today too, because that's what we're going to spend the next 45 minutes on. So let's get started here a little bit. So do want to start by saying as well that the brochures that were handed out to you provides a little bit of context to some of my presentation today as well, even though we will definitely be focused on the financial industry. But that's just to say that when you see that brochure that I handed out, and it talks about helping seniors stay at home safely and securely, you may be thinking, how are you the chief AI officer at an organization like that, where your primary demographic is seniors and so forth? Well, there's actually a lot we can do with it. So when we're looking to help seniors stay at home safely and securely, a lot of that involves making sure that we are on top of everything that they need taken care of within their lives. So, of course, you've got medications, medical trips that need to be provided by Uber Health. You've got doctor's appointments, so on and so forth. Groceries being delivered by DoorDash. Their dog being groomed. Their house being cleaned. Those are the types of things that we take care of at Bernie's Way, if they're especially helpful if their family does not live nearby. And they don't want to go in an institution like Avery Point or Canterbury or Westminster and so forth. They can stay at home and we will help them be able to do that. Install top-of-the-line AI advanced home monitoring equipment as well that provides instant fall detection, even fracture prevention flooring, motorized toilet seats. All sorts of things are possible now with the innovations within technology. And the same goes from AI. When we are wanting to help caregivers, family members, stay informed of the services that we're providing and keep them connected, we use AI to do that as well. Because when it comes to taking care of a loved one who's staying at their house, every member of the family communicates differently. And then what we are able to do with AI is ultra-personalize the communications that are made to them, keeping them informed of how we're taking care of mom or dad or grandma or grandpa or so forth. So that sets the context. Let's go ahead and get rolling here and so forth, because I do want to bring this to financial services and not just about senior care. So, of course, you all have a lot on your plate, right? And this is just sort of a snippet. As you're dealing with financial services and advising clients and so forth in regards to their path forward and such, you're being inundated with data points all the time. Even if you weren't looking at stuff, you could just have CNBC playing all day, and there's tons of data points just from one channel. Never mind, you all are paying attention to, no doubt, hundreds of different channels all the time, and many times you're having to synthesize information very quickly. You're having to make sure that you understand an opposing viewpoint and so forth. And so one thing is for sure, you're probably having to come up with a clear, defensible point of view for whatever your argument may be, your case that you're making to a client or a coworker, or perhaps leadership within your organization, right? There's ways, of course, that AI can step into that process and be of assistance to you. And many of you in this room are perhaps already exploring that already. But just in case you have not done so, we're going to explore some workflows that may give you some ideas of things that you could do. But before we get to that, of course, being in financial services, we need to talk a little bit about guardrails. Now, I understand from Tyson, this has already been quite a bit of a conversation amongst the group in various capacities and so forth. So I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time here. Your industry is heavily regulated, and so you're very familiar with the need to make sure that we are following all the regulations, state, federal, and otherwise, and so forth. And so when it comes to utilizing AI, which is just this sort of free-form software that we can just talk to, and it does these magical things for us, right? There's risks that come involved in that. And this presentation is not going to be ignorant of those risks. In fact, I actually went ahead and created an entire guardrail system for our organization to ensure, as we're working with seniors, that we're dealing with PII and PHI, that we're making sure that nobody in the company is doing something accidental in regards to their use of AI. So we created a product called Gyrosphere, that allows us to kind of have a living AI governance policy. Because the challenging thing when it comes to governing AI isn't static, it's not structured. It's easy to tell somebody, this is how thou shall and shall not use something like Salesforce or Monday or even your email, right? But AI, of course, is fluid. It just greets you with this prompt that says, ask me anything you want. What do you want to do, right? And so you're basically programming, with every prompt, you're in essence programming a computer to handle the data that you provide, run some computations, apply some fuzzy logic, and of course, make guesses at what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And so there's risk associated with that, not necessarily so much in that whatever data you're putting in is leaking out onto the internet. That would obviously not bode well for the companies like Anthropic and OpenAI and Google and so forth if that happened. They have to handle AI with gloved hands just like they have with cloud computing and prove that they can over the past couple of decades, right? So very similarly, we need to be able to trust them, but nonetheless, we have to have our own safeguards. And so making sure that we have guardrails in place is critically important. So again, I'm not going to delve too much longer in that and if you do want to know more about that and about the governance product that we built for ourselves, feel free to ping me with my contact information that's in the end. Another foundational thing that I always find with every presentation is necessary to cover real quick and not just assume is that AI, of course, is not a search engine. It's not the same thing as our experience with Google over the past quarter century plus. It is quite a bit different. And so certainly in the early days of AI's emergence, when ChatGPT came out and then Google tried to quickly chase them and others emerged on the scene and so forth, there were a lot of news reports of these just like erroneous, crazy results coming out of AI and so forth. And if you dug deeper into beyond the headline, typically it's because of how it was being used, not necessarily because of AI itself. Though, a few years ago, yes, partly because of AI itself, and the AI creators have improved it considerably, right? Far fewer hallucinations than it used to do, much improved accuracy, much better sourcing. Did anybody run a prompt in AI 2-3 years ago by chance where you said, make sure you verified your sources and it provided you with links, and then you went to click on the links and the page doesn't even exist? Anyone? It was like crazy. Like, why the hell would you make up a URL? Like, I mean, that's one thing to make up the story, but then to say, like, this is where I got it from, and that's completely fake too. Like, you gotta be kidding me. Why even do that? But that was the early days of AI trying to guess what it is that it needed to deliver to you in response to the prompt that you had provided. Fortunately now, most of the time, at least in our experience at our company, if you click on those verified sources links, they all work and they actually go to the real legitimate source. So that's fantastic. But when it comes to getting excellent output from AI, some of you may have already seen this in various training information that's available online and so forth. But again, I never want to assume anybody knows this. But if you really think of AI as an individual that you are delegating stuff to, just like you would with a human and not a search engine, if you had hired an associate to work with you and day one gave them this big project and said, hey, do this, and that was basically it, you backed away, you're probably not going to get a great result, right? You're going to get crap back. You've got to be able to tell them They've got to understand the context. They got to know the why. They got to know your voice. They need to know this is how we put our presentations together. These are the structures of them. This is our branding information, so on and so forth. And that's what's going to empower them to do an excellent job. Well, AI is the same thing. I mean, every time you go to use AI with a fresh prompt, it pretty much knows nothing, right? And so it's a clean slate. You've got to give it some background information, then you can move forward and get much better output. So enough said there. I'm going to assume enough of you have kind of experienced that in your own utilization of AI. What I really want to jump into now is the 4 workflows specific to your industry that I hope will be informative for some of you, especially those that are, again, you're kind of really still getting your feet wet, kind of getting this feel of like, can I do with AI? I've run a few things. It's helped me with some email. I've done some basic research, but can I push it a little bit further? What might that look like? And in the spirit of Apple back in the Steve Jobs day, I have one more thing for you at the end. So let's go ahead and get started into this, starting with workflow number 1, which is basically how you distill information quickly to provide an investment research summarization. And I'm not going to read the screen for you. Feel free to do that as the slide is up. But basically, imagine you're getting a deluge of information. You're being asked to provide a presentation on it within a short period of time, and you want to make sure that you are taking all that information in. Might be multiple earnings calls, multiple news reports, even analysts' opinions, so on and so forth. You want to take it all into account as you go ahead and put this presentation together and so forth. You can have AI go ahead and help you with that. And the execution on that is basically something similar to this. Now, I will admit that even this is light. If I was actually writing the prompt for the example that I gave, it would probably be 3 of these screens. But given the fact that I had no idea how big the room was and wanted to make sure that everyone on the back is able to read, I did a lighter form of it. But nonetheless, you should hopefully see elements of the components that I mentioned on the screen earlier in regards to what makes a good prompt to make sure that you're getting decent information back. So we see here we've got roles. We're communicating the why. What is it that we're trying to do? We're giving it specifics of what we want, and we're also giving it constraints. Constraints are a wonderful thing when you're working with AI, by the way. And so this might be, again, just this very light version, summarized view of the type of output that you're going to get back from something like this. Now, my guess is this is a fairly simplistic example, and there might be a number of you in the room that are already using AI for something like this, and that's fantastic for sure. And I'd love to hear during the Q&A session what sort of tools and so forth that is being used here in the room, and any ideas to share with each other to help to improve each of your use in that regards. So workflow number 2 is basically how do you sometimes deal with writer's block when you're having to put together a big report or a commentary, say on a portfolio, and you're having to do this for numerous clients at the end of a quarter. And so in this example here, we're talking, I don't know if this is usual or not for you all, but 50 clients. In my mind, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I have to put together portfolio reports for 50 clients every 3 months, to me that seems like a lot of work, and I'm sure that it is. And there's if we think of the workload as a bell curve, where we have this sort of messy middle that is all behind the scenes. The client never sees this portion. You know, you have the client interactions at the early end and so forth, and of course you have your ideation of what this past quarter's been like, your own gut feel for it, the human side that's required and necessary and hopefully never ever goes away when it comes to financial advising there at the start. But then as you have your ideas in mind of how you want to take the portfolio commentary going forward with your clients, there's a messy middle there that you could just kind of bring your AI assistant that you want to delegate to and say, hey, why don't you take care of some of this for me so I don't have to necessarily carry all this burden. That frees up me to now be more creative, to be more relational with my client base, to work more with my coworkers, to spend more time analyzing the news and so forth from a human perspective versus the busy work that comes with putting the writing together and the charts together and so on and so forth. So if you could feed all that to AI, in an example like this, again, kind of light to make sure it fits on the screen and big enough font to read from the back and so forth. So here again, we're given a role, we're telling exactly what we want to do, we're providing some constraints in regards to the language being used and so on and so forth. And from that, then, we should be getting a result that's a little bit like this. Now, granted, this may not be readable from the back of the room, and that's okay. This one's just meant to be an example of the thoroughness that we expect to get from AI just really at the start. But the main thing is here, 80% draft in seconds, you provide the final 20%. The final 20% that really, really matters, in my opinion, right? The stuff at the beginning, the stuff at the end, the ideas, the gut feel, and so forth that informs, here's how the research on this, here's how the presentation of this past quarter should go for each individual client. And then as I go to personalize that feedback to them, that report back to them, that presentation back to them, it's where the human side of it comes back into play to make sure that it relates to them, right? Because you know your clients, AI does not. It may know them factually, but otherwise it's not going to know them emotionally, relationally, and so forth. So we never want to let go of that, of course, too. Workflow number 3. Here, we're fighting confirmation bias by stress testing some narrative assumptions. This is basically where you have AI play devil's advocate with you. This is where you give permission. No, you don't give permission. You tell AI, assume I'm wrong, tell me why and how I'm wrong, right? And, excuse me while I take a sip here. Even if you're not necessarily working on, say, a financial report or an analysis of a company and so forth, even in all the other things that you might do with AI, apart from, say, the straightforward benign stuff like make this email more succinct and not have 35 run-on sentences. Not that that's characteristic of my emails at all. But if you want to, is to basically give AI permission when you're working on something really important, strategic, in-depth, is tell it to combat you. I find when I give AI the ability to argue back, that's when I usually get the richest amount of results from it. In fact, here's a trick that I've learned early on in working with AI tools is if you get them arguing with each other, even better. Oh my gosh, has anybody done that? Use multiple AIs to argue with, all right, number of hands in the room. Well, for those of you that didn't raise your hand because you haven't tried that, highly suggest it. It's really, if you give one AI, say Gemini. Gemini's really good with facts, right? It comes from Google, so, kind of a chip off the old block. Really loves facts, so have Gemini put together a lot of facts. And then you might take that factual output from Gemini and bring that over to ChatGPT, which can be a little bit more flowery than Gemini, and you say, ChatGPT, you may tell it where it came from, or you might not. You might want to leave it in suspense as to how you got this information. It's up to you. But sometimes I do tell it, hey, Gemini produced this. I want you to rip it apart. Find out what's wrong with it. Challenge the assumptions that Gemini has made here. And then sometimes I've even taken that and gone to a third one. I'll bring that over to Claude and say, Claude, here are 2 perspectives. Argue them against them. Challenge them. Find out where they're weak. How can we make them better? What can you imagine that they did not uncover, and so forth. Your result after doing that is going to be insanely awesome, let me tell you. So I use that from all sorts of things, from coding to research to putting together presentations, so on and so forth. Yes, AI worked with me alongside in putting together this information for you and so forth as well. And there were multiple AI tools involved in doing so. Now you may be thinking, I don't want to pay for every single one of those. My gosh, it's like getting the streaming services. Here I am having to subscribe to Hulu and Peacock and Paramount and YouTube TV and so on and so forth. Anybody in the room familiar with Perplexity? A lot of hands, nice, awesome. You barely ever see ads for them and so forth, but I feel like they don't give enough attention for how awesome Perplexity is. And I do not get compensated by Perplexity in any case. As a matter of fact, they take plenty of money away from me every month. But for just $20 a month in Perplexity, you can actually select many different LLMs to run your prompt against. So ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, Kimi, and 3 or 4 others. If you're a fan of Grok, sorry, they don't support Grok. But you can subscribe to Grok too. I think it's not overly expensive. But with that $120 a month, you have access to all those different platforms and you'll be able to do what I just mentioned there. But anyway, that's a side note, little plug for them, for Perplexity. But here's an example of what this execution might look like, what this prompt might appear here and so forth. And this is the key part right here as well. Act as a skeptical, bearish portfolio manager, tear apart this thesis. I mean, you're given from AI instruction to be brutal as heck. here and so forth. That's going to uncover some amazing things. Even if you disagree with some of the results that come back from it, no doubt there's going to be some things that it's going to surface that you're going to be like, ooh, that's an interesting perspective. Let me run with that a little bit, or let me challenge that, or think of that, twist that, and think of that in a different way. Sometimes the best ideas come from many times outside of what's obvious, outside of our own industry, so on and so forth. We see that a lot in innovation. I mean, we think back to the announcement that Steve Jobs made of the first iPhone in 2007, and just the various things that were pulled together outside of what was obvious. Everybody thought of phones in the same exact way at the time, and of course, they thought of them differently. And they pulled in technologies that existed outside the realm of the mobile phone market, brought those in, and now they're commonplace today. So this is hopefully what we're going to get, just as an example of it. But here, the idea is, as you get this type of information back from your AI tools that you're using, you're making your final thesis infinitely more robust. And if somebody challenges you, for instance, when you go to present your findings or your perspective with a counterpoint that you've already assessed with AI, fantastic. You've already gone there. You've already had that argument already presented to you. And then the final workflow here is, here we're making sense of the unstructured, where we're taking sort of, this is kind of similar to the other one, but here we're not necessarily challenging. We're just kind of trying to see things a little bit different. So here we want to interpret data a little bit alternatively than what might be obvious. And when you have AI kind of look under the cover, peek around the corner, open up the closet, the things that are not obvious, it's amazing many times what you'll find it can uncover for you, regardless of what type of thing that you're working on. So if we go here to how this might actually look, so here we're saying analyze the attached data set, continue weekly job posting volumes, web traffics for a retailer over the last 6 months, correlate these trends, so on and so forth, summarize your findings, highlight where alternative data suggests a potential earnings beat or miss, and the confidence level of assertion based on that data provided. And that last line right there, right here, confidence level, if you don't regularly insert that in your prompts that you use with AI, I highly recommend it. Having AI tell you its level of confidence in something is quite eye-opening because many times you'll find it'll then admit, oh, I don't really have a high degree of confidence on this. I'm really making a lot of assumptions here, and here's why, and so forth. And again, that just allows you to take your output, the thing that you're working on, to a whole nother level in doing so. And this is basically kind of what you should get here. So with that type of a prompt. So AI finds the patterns that might be missed by yourself or maybe by others within your industry. And that gives you a competitive edge, hopefully, or certainly more appreciation by your coworkers, company leadership, and the clients that you work with, that you've basically thought of everything. And that's what AI is helping you to do. While at the same time, giving you more margin to focus on the things that matter more to you, other than doing the grunt work of all this stuff that it's taking care of for you. So 4 workflows there. We whipped through them really, really quickly. Hopefully, again, some of you in the room may be doing some of this stuff already, but for those that aren't, hopefully it gave you an idea of like, oh, that's interesting. Kind of like to try that. But like I said, one more thing. So here's a bonus thing, is especially for those of you that have spent a little bit of time in AI and have kind of started to imagine, like, wouldn't the world be great if I could be Thanos and have my infinity stones and snap my fingers and not make half the universe go away, but perhaps make half of my work that I don't like go away? And so why hasn't somebody created an app that does fill in the blank? Well, you can do it now. If you can dream it, you can build it, which is crazy awesome. And so you don't have to be an engineer with 30 degrees of experience like I am to go ahead and write your own software utilities to assist you in doing your job. You can just program now in natural language, speaking in plain English or any other language if you prefer another language. So, but you probably don't prefer speaking in Python. So my guess is here in the room, otherwise you probably wouldn't be in the financial industry. You'd be in the tech industry if you did, and so forth. So if you put in this right here to get that, so an example here, this prompt, I have a weekly CSV report, municipal bonds, so on and so forth. And here's what I want you to do with it. Now, this is a very simplistic example. You can build a much more feature-rich application than this and so forth. But basically, you build a custom automation in 3 minutes. Again, if you could dream it, you could build it. This is what you get. Isn't this awesome? So I know you're all very excited. Yeah, you get a Python script that you can run on your local machine. Just open up Terminal or something like that, and this is, I'm just kidding. This is what it's producing behind the scenes. You want something that's more like this. I want you to provide it to me in Excel format, or I want you to give me a utility that I can run myself. Now, maybe for the techies in the room, this is kind of what excites you. But I'm guessing you don't want to have to go through that. You really just want something that you can just provide the weekly spreadsheet to, and it just knows to take off and run with it and give you back your response and so forth. And that's what you could do. So you can have it create that Excel table if you want, or you can actually have it create for you something that is runnable every time you just drop a CSV file into this chat, and that's what this does right here. Now that's not a full-fledged application. That's just basically running within the chat that you basically just put the prompt in and so forth. But you could actually make it, tell it, make a utility, give it a skin, make it look like an application that you can click upload and you select your file and you add it to it, and then behind the scenes it goes ahead and runs all that. And maybe it keeps a history of all that output for you so that you could do additional analysis on it, trend lines, so on and so forth. And then you could just keep adding to it, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to touch a little bit on how you do that type of stuff after we get through this 30-day plan. So in this kind of like, this isn't like a diet thing here. So don't worry about if you don't like dieting or fitness, this isn't like that. But many times I find when I go and I do a presentation and I throw out customized for every group that I talk to, here are ways you can use AI specific to your industry and so forth. I can usually sometimes see some eyes glaze over, or I get people come up, talk to me afterwards like, oh my gosh, Jim, you threw a lot at me. I'm not quite sure where to start. So I finally smartened up and started to put in how to actually get started. And I don't mean necessarily get started using AI. I'm going to assume everybody in the room has probably already gone past that step, probably well past that step and so forth. But how do you take your AI utilization to a point where it's amplifying what you do on a regular, ongoing, frequent basis and so forth? Well, don't try to eat the whole elephant at one time. For one, I don't think elephants taste very good, but also it's a lot to eat. So what you really want to do is just pick a friction point. So again, if you were Thanos and you could snap your fingers and make half of something go away, what is that something? Just start there and think, how can I approach that work differently with AI than I'm doing already today? How can I take some of the things that Jim talked about? I'm already doing this thing with Gemini. What if I now also incorporate ChatGPT or Claude into the process? What might that do to the output? Does that take it to a whole nother level? I don't know. Let me give it a shot. What I do know is I'm still tired of this one friction point that I have to keep dealing with. So week 1, try that. Week 2, start building a prompt library. Why should you build a prompt library? Because why start from scratch every single time? So starting from scratch every time you have to do something relatively over and over and over again is never fun. It's great to be able to kind of cut partway into the process, right? So the challenge many times with, if we're talking about utilizing prompts across different LLM platforms, is they don't know what you're doing in each other, right? So your chat history in Claude, ChatGPT has no idea about. It doesn't know what you're talking about over there. All right, it's like having friends in different rooms and you run into each one and you talk to each one individually and they don't talk to one another and so on and so forth. So if you build your prompt library in your own tool set, say it could be something as simple as a Google Doc or Notepad or something more sophisticated. Again, we kind of were struggling with this a little bit within our organization. So we actually built our own online collaborative prompt repository that allows us to share prompts across our team, even create prompt templates that we could just use a browser extension and drop right into whatever LLM we're using, and we just fill in the variable data placeholders in that template. We can also rank those prompts and rate those prompts and so on and so forth. And then it works so well for us, we decided to make it available for free for anybody to use. So you'll see a link to that later if you'd like to check that out. But building a prompt library has really saved us a lot of time and has made sure that those of us in the organization aren't necessarily building something that somebody has already created on the team. So week 3, it's time to start leveling up. Go ahead and try that devil's advocate workflow. Use multiple LLMs. Get kind of crazy with your AI experimentation. Think of what's possible in a perfect world. This is what I would love AI to do for me. Chances are it can do it. And if you're unsure of what to ask for it, just tell it that. Just say, hey, this is my idea. I'm not exactly sure how to put this in a prompt to you yet. Can you help me kind of churn through this and figure this out together? It will do that. I mean, AI knows how to write a prompt, the perfect prompt, better than any human, right? So, well, maybe not, but we'll just assume that it does since it processes prompts all day long and so forth. And then amplify, that's week 4. And that's kind of the whole point, is I'd love to see everybody kind of really amplify what you do in your job and your ability to serve your customers better than you ever have before without burning the candle at 50 ends. If we ever remember the Dr. Seuss Cat in the Hat books with the image where he was balancing on the ball and holding the rake and the fish and the cake and the milk and so on and so forth at the same time, I'm sure many times your days can feel like that and be like, oh my gosh, if I could just stand on the ground and hold all these things, that would be wonderful. So it works great when you're drawing imaginary cats, doesn't work so well in real life. So fortunately now, AI is able to stand on the ball and hold the rake and the cake and the fish and so on and so forth all at the same time. We just need to teach it how to do that for us in the proper way. So that's where we get to amplify, and we then start to use AI coding tools like ChatGPT's Codex, Claude Code, Perplexity Computer, so on and so forth, to actually start building the utilities and so forth that take our work to a whole nother level. And the ultra-friendly one of my favorite among here, Lovable. Anybody ever do anything with Lovable in here yet? We got a few hands raised, awesome. That's fantastic. So Lovable basically allows you to program, create full-fledged websites and applications without needing to know how to code at all. And it does all the behind the scenes for you, setting up the database, the authentication, the security, so on and so forth. And it's dirt cheap, which makes it even better. Although you'll get hooked and you'll end up spending more money with them, just warning you ahead of time. So don't fall in love with it, I guess, unless you don't mind spending money for awesomeness. So that's basically brings us to the end of my run through. I wanted to make sure we had plenty of time for any questions and so forth, because hopefully I gave you some speaking or some thinking points and such. But the main thing is I want to point out the QR code on the screen. I have 36 prompts that I created related to your role as CFAs. And they are across, there's 6 prompts across 6 different categories. And I put those all within our prompt repository tool that I mentioned to you a short while ago. And those are available for you for free. Feel free to check them out. You create a free account, have your own library, pull the prompts down, revise them as you wish, trash those that you don't like. This is the stupidest prompt ever, Jim. I can't believe you put this one together. That's okay, I won't be offended whatsoever. Or you may be like, this prompt is really awesome. I can't believe I didn't think of this before. And so you might want to massage it and make it even better for you or your team. So there we go. Threw a whole bunch at you. What can I answer? Any questions? Yes, sir.
Jim, thank you for the presentation. Everybody's time here is worth more than $200 an hour.
Yes.
So if you had $200 a month to spend on subscriptions, give me your top 3 to 5 tools.
Okay.
From anyone from an expert or someone that's been underneath a rock, doesn't know how to spell AI. Right?
Yeah.
So 3 to 5.
Okay, very good. I would probably thinking of your industry, my favorite tool is probably not allowed by your industry. I'm just gonna put that right out there. So I'll share it anyway. Manus AI, M-A-N-U-S. Manus AI is based out of Singapore, has founder roots to China. So there we go, when we talk about financial advising. Nope, that's out, done. Don't need to talk about it anymore, Jim, and so forth. I'll just put it out there. I do not use Manus AI, even though it's not based in China. Thank you very much for coming. I do not use it for anything confidential, sensitive, or anything like that. But its ability to put together reports and so on and so forth as well. Manus actually created formatted this presentation for you today. So I wrote up what I wanted to talk about, worked through the outline quite a bit with Perplexity. Went to Manus and basically said, Manus, give me the first 3 slides. What are you thinking from a design perspective? It gave those back to me. I was like, well, let's tweak this. I don't like this. Let's change this up a little bit. And then I was like a few more slides. It did that. And then I was like, all right, go ahead and roll with the rest. So it's really, really awesome for that. But again, do not use Manus for anything confidential. You can use it for $20 a month. But get into the shopping cart. Perplexity, of course. Number 1. I mean, Perplexity is freaking awesome. And then if I'm going to be doing some development, Lovable is in the mix as well. And then if I want something, if I'm going to do hardcore development, I'm going to be using Claude for Claude Code. So those are kind of my 3 top picks, if you will. So I'll probably spend the balance, probably 100 towards Perplexity and 50 each towards Lovable and Claude if I only had 200 to spend. But thank you, appreciate it. Yes?
Is base 44 easier to use for offices than Lovable?
In my opinion, no. Lovable requires really no technical expertise whatsoever, and the user interface is very straightforward. It works a lot like your regular chats that you would have with ChatGPT or Gemini and so forth. What's different about it is you have a sidebar that's basically your chat column, and then you have your preview of what it is that you're building over here, be it a website or full-fledged application and so forth. There's really very little configuration that you need to know how to do. Even setting things up like if you want Google sign-on and Apple sign-on for your application, you don't have to go over to Google's Cloud Console and figure out how the heck do I create OAuth, single sign-on for my applications and their crazy, ridiculous forms that clearly engineers built to accomplish that. Lovable just takes care of it behind the scenes. You want to enable payment, they enable a whole Stripe integration behind the scenes. You just say, I want to integrate Stripe, and it's like, okay, happy to do it. So they take care of the database structure for you, they take care of the security. It runs periodic security checks behind the scenes on everything that you built automatically, tells you when something needs to be addressed. It also has baked in SEO and so forth provided by SEMrush, which is really awesome without having to cost any more. Pretty amazing what you can do in Lovable, just $20 a month. So you'll likely find it far easier. Yes, Hunter?
Yeah, so one of the things you mentioned was, I guess, using AI to clean the data for like a quick report.
Mm-hmm.
If, suppose I'm looking at my CRM, so I have all this information on client support tickets, or I have all this information on top users. It's not very easy to search through that information, but I can throw it out as a CSV.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to be the best tips on how to clean that information with AI so the AI can even make sense of it?
Yeah.
I know how to make sense of it. It takes me a lot of time.
Yep. So funny enough, I actually had to do a crazy data cleanup and normalization project about a year or so ago where we had some contact databases spread across 5 different files coming from 5 originating sources. And there was a ton of, we're not even talking duplicates. There was like quadruplicates, whatever that might be called, and so forth within the data. And there was a lot of junk information within fields, most of it written by Microsoft Outlook, thanks to Exchange servers. Thank you, Microsoft, appreciate it. Way to gummy up our data and so forth. But we had to do exactly that. And one of the biggest challenges, first and foremost, was to figure out the patterns within the data. Now, of course, to do that years ago, utilizing a variety of different tools, say Excel or SQL databases and so forth, we'd have to program specifically for every single variation of data within the columns, across the columns, right, or within the files and so forth. With AI, what we started with is just basically read this file, tell me what you see. Read this file, tell me what you see. Read this file, and so we did that 5 times. And so basically, the first thing was for AI just to have context as to what it's working with. It did a very good job of identifying the data in there on its own. We didn't have to necessarily go and define every single field. It figured out almost all of them correctly. We went in there, made a few tweaks, and then we basically started exploring with it, okay, if we were gonna take all of this data and merge it together so that there's one single source of truth, and that we make sure that there's 0 data loss, and that any duplication, even within fields, is removed, how do we do that? And we just started thinking through that process and so forth and working together. When it came down to actually run the process, there was a completely different tool I haven't even mentioned yet called Lindy, which was really truly not built for this. It's meant to be if anybody here is familiar with Zapier or Make, for instance, Lindy basically provides workflow automation. And I tested trying to do this, this marriage of the data and final cleanup in Claude. I had, there was one I did coding with, it might have been Manus actually as well, because it really wasn't anything super confidential within the data set. It was more just benign contact data and such. But in the end, it ended up being Lindy that was able to accomplish it. And then I used other AI tools to do spot checks. So I basically gave them the source files, and I had them create their own programs for spot checking the final output to make sure that there was zero data loss at all. And it worked out great. So, yeah. Yes?
Do you use any like pre-processing tools to de-identify PII before going into the frontier model?
Yes. So thank you very much for coming. The governance product that I mentioned to you earlier that we created for our organization that basically provides live AI policy governance, because basically what we do, it knows our general AI usage guidelines, what tools we're allowed to use, which ones are kind of of concern, what data we're allowed to submit as an AI query. We go to that tool first and we say, this is what I want to do with AI and the data that I'm going to use for it. And then it basically validates whether it gives us green, yellow, red in regards to our policies, whether or not they can be run. So that's basically how we have PII protections at the front. Yeah. And then our core operating system that we use for our organization for managing everything with seniors, of course, we have a lot of PII and PHI in there. And so, we have to be, HIPAA compliant, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of validation checks that go on in that process. Yeah. But we had to basically write our own.
The data of the PII and then submit?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. So basically, it's many times it's a cleanup process, either removal or a dummy data. Yeah. If we feel that we need to have the dummy data to ensure something within our software is working right, we'll go that route. If we can validate what we're trying to do without the data, then we just remove it. Yeah.
Local models for data that can't go in frontier?
To the extent, the types of stuff that we're doing, we haven't found the need to use local models as of yet. No. Our legal counsel has cleared us for what we're doing with the cloud models. So, other questions? Yes?
Thank you for the presentation.
Absolutely.
Could you speak to like Copilot Studio, Copilot, as well as like how they're trying to develop like agentic workflows within like the enterprise environment aspect?
Sure. I'm admittedly not going to be able to speak to Copilot too well. We do not use Copilot within our company, so my experience with Copilot is more just sort of ancillary on my own as an AI hobbyist and as a author and presenter and so forth. So generally, I find Copilot overall to be lacking many of the capabilities that are present within many of the other tools. And as I go into as I speak within some companies and bring that up, that oftentimes gets, there's the heads nod and so on and so forth. It's fortunate now that you've got at least multiple models that are available to you versus just the one when they had just that exclusive agreement with ChatGPT. I recognize that Microsoft is seeing the writing on the wall, like, hey, we need to be more competitive and do more things. But I haven't personally experienced how good at Copilot might be at like writing code, for instance, if that's what you're asking. Yeah. Sorry, I don't. Does anybody else in the room have experience with that, by chance?
That's exactly
I'm sorry?
parallel.
Oh, okay, very good. Yeah. Sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. So you can ask Claude. No, I'm just kidding. So,
Don't they plug into Claude?
they do plug into Claude now. That's why I say it's like maybe Claude knows a little bit behind the scenes, what it can do, and so on and so forth. My hope, obviously, is Microsoft's going to remain a competitive force in the space, and we'll see it. But I think what's working for them is so many companies have embraced them early on, at least, because they feel that Copilot's more locked down and be a little safer. Thank you very much. But certainly we've certainly seen reports of Anthropic. Anthropic's corporate enterprise market share climbing rapidly. So no doubt that puts a fire under Microsoft's feet some too. Anyone else? Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about agentic bots and just letting them loose, doing their daily tasks for you? Versus running it from a prompt.
I'm surprisingly generally not a fan of letting AI just kind of run loose. Unless it's got some very clear boundaries as to what it is and is not allowed to do, and so forth as well. There are times when we utilize, we have program scheduled bots or so on and so forth that they get triggered by various things to process things, but usually their functionality is fairly limited, so that we don't have to worry about something, the wheels coming off the wagon or something that we've got to be embarrassed about later or contact our legal counsel on and so forth. But for fairly benign tasks, it can be very beneficial, especially if you've got a lot of routine things that need to be done to program these agents that just kind of work on their own and get things done for you. Many of the top platforms now allow some level of agentic capabilities. And that varies, of course, by platform as to what those agentic capabilities are. And for anybody in the room that doesn't know what we mean by agentic capabilities, basically it's just the concept of AI being able to just execute project and task and so forth on its own. So ideally fully autonomously, although there's also semi-autonomously as well, where you've got some trigger or where it has to do checkpoints at different stages before it can just really, really run. So that's generally a quick definition of agentic. But I think we're going to see rapid maturation within agentic capabilities, which is really, really exciting because I think there's tremendous potential there. What I'm not in favor, though, of as well is where those agentic capabilities are going to be too interruptive to human capability and potential. I'm a huge fan of human plus AI, not AI plus human. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, whatever, but we have found that one of our favorite agentic platforms is actually the computer mode in Perplexity. You can create some really incredible utilities and so forth, or bots there, and either schedule them time-based or have them initiate based off various triggers that they're listening to through APIs or webhooks. So, or you can build your own custom with a tool like Lovable or Claude Code or something like that. Any other questions? All righty. Well, again, thank you all very much for your time, attention, questions, so forth. If you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to me now before I head out the door, or use this contact information to reach out to me. I don't mind. Text me anytime if you have a question, preferably not 3 a.m., but 3 p.m. works very well if you'd like. So, but I will say in advance, I'm sorry, I will not be able to sit down and grab coffee with anybody that may want to talk a little bit more, because I'm moving to Florida next Tuesday. So you only had me for this brief moment. So see you, RVA. It was nice knowing you for 32 years. So, yeah. Anyway, thank you very much. Appreciate your time and attention. Thanks.